So, Edoardo Jacucci. I'm Italian, and coming here, I've been notified by the two frauders, which are Norwegian, that the policy is no tie. This is kind of informal event, we want to show too formal. I said, no, sorry, I'm Italian. If I have a suit, I must have a tie. So if you don't mind, this tie is for you. Show of respect. I'm really honored to be among you and to share some thoughts. It's my favorite tie. So, the reality of big data and advertising. So what I would like to do in this small chat, which for me is an introduction to a conversation we are going to have later on. So you're just, I'd like to learn from you as much as hopefully you will learn something from me today. So I'd like to interact with you later. So let me share a few thoughts there. And what I wanted to do is, first thing, demystify a little bit what this big data is. And I've been working with this stuff for a while now, for a few years. I joined Schibsted about 2 years ago, a bit short of 2 years ago, with this task, build these capabilities in the group, at group level, and in many areas, advertising being probably one of the most prominent and most relevant one, especially in the short term, but also engagement, growth, innovation. There is so much stuff you can do with data. And this is the task I've been given. Before that, I was in a consultancy, McKinsey, leading the big data practice for banking in Europe. I was also in Madrid visiting BBVA, a very interesting bank. And so, first step, I think, is important to demystify a little bit what this big data thing is. So I'd like to share a few thoughts. What we all know, and this is no news, is that big data, okay, is a lot of data. This is what it is about. But I would like to put it under the light of this is a societal phenomenon. It's really something new that never happened before. The amount of data we're producing is staggering, and every 2 years we basically produce as much data as been produced in many decades before. So there is one aspect to data, which is the exponential growth of the amount of data. You heard about the volume of data. Another aspect, which you also heard about, is the variety. The variety is related to the formats, the type of data, so structured, unstructured, video, non-video, text-based, sensor data, but it's also linked, obviously, to the devices that produce this data. So the proliferation of types of devices, of course, the devices we all use, but also think about the Internet of Things and the amount of sensors which are going to be put in production. And we expect an exponential growth there of sensors and hence of data, so new type of data coming into the world. The other aspect is that this is all, the usual terminology is velocity, and I don't like this. I mean, it is real time, so the fact that there is a lot of data being produced, representing what's happening in the world, and it's of a varied nature, and a lot of it is real time. And as of today, many of the, for those who are running sites, many of the operations on the site, if you have all the tools set up properly, you can see exactly what's happening on your website by the millisecond. It's real time, something that just a few decades ago was a dream. So that's fine, but what I find interesting and what I spent a little bit of time understanding is what is driving this? Why do we have this exponential growth? Why is this relevant? Why is it important to understand what is beneath it? Because to understand the meta trend or what is actually happening beneath helps us to understand what is going to happen in our industry and where the market is going. So this is some of the study we did, and here summarized in a nutshell in one slide. And the fact is that there is a self-reinforcing cycle happening where the increasing amount of data asks for larger storage. So there's a lot of investment that you have seen in technology which brought the storage cost down. So you can see the exponential growth of data, but at the same time the storage costs go down as much. They're linked. Now the fact that you have cheaper storage, that means that you can do like Facebook does, which has currently, well, this is all data, but 150 petabytes of data. Now it's much more, but the last time I checked, it's 150 petabytes of data, which is the whole history of Schibsted since the beginning. They've stored everything. Why? Because storage has become so cheap, and it's becoming cheaper and cheaper. Now, the fact that you have all this data, you can store it, and it's cheaper to store it, It's not anymore a problem whether you should aggregate the data or you should delete it. The real problem becomes privacy and the EU regulations, sure, but technically we can basically store the data forever. It doesn't really cost that much. And we can keep it at a very granular level. Now, what this means is that we can also do a lot more analytics. And there has been a lot of investment and development in the market, developing cheaper analytics, and there is a process of democratization of that. You have been approached, certainly like I'm basically every day, by companies providing analytics as a service. There are more and more of that. What's happening is that a lot of the type of analysis that these do are being standardized, put in libraries, and then you can build a company out of it. So you have a proliferation on companies. Now, what this means for us is that there is more analytic tools and way to do analytics which is available at low cost, so cheaper analytics. Cheaper analytics means that our ability to extract insight from the data is increasing a lot. That is also growing exponentially. And the insight, when used properly, is a great source for innovation. Innovation for products, services, devices, new business models, and this is what you see happening every day. And we saw it also in advertising. Now, the moment you also have a proliferation of businesses, services, and devices, guess what? This produces more data, and we are, again, at the beginning of the circle. So this was our interpretation of what's going on, also to understand what the implication will be for advertising. And I highlighted data science in red because, of course, at the core of this, in order to extract value out of the data, one has to have proper tools to do that. It's true it's being democratized, but we are investing as ships that a lot of resources and people in building this data science competence in-house. And that is the unit I'm leading. Advanced Data Analytics, so a large team that I have is data scientists from all over the world. So I will spend a little bit of time on data science now, because that is also something which I guess people wonder about, what the heck is it? So let's demystify this a little bit. So data science is at the crossroad between statistics, programming and hacking, and business understanding. And this has existed in other forms, like operation research, like statistics, in fact, machine learning. But recently, because of the amount of data available and the need for analytics, this new figure and this new competence emerged. And now they're relatively defined. So the people I hire are data scientists with a very, very clear profile. So what is the science behind it? You might have heard about prediction and classification. So these are statistical models, so like regression, random forest, and so on, to do predictions and classifications. There's clustering and segmentation. There is recommendation. Think of recommendation you get on Amazon. There's statistical models behind that to make that work. There's, of course, optimization, which has been around since the 60s. It's just a more sophisticated version of it. So that's the science, and it's kind of the magic. But what is interesting to us is what does it do? What does it do for business? Yes, it's made useful. Now the battery is failing. There you go. Replay. Right? So prediction and classification can be used to understand, to predict, for instance, when people click, when they do an action. That's relevant for us. For advertisers, of course, you want to target those people, those users which are most likely to click on the ad, if that is what you're trying to achieve. Clustering and segmentation, very relevant for targeting, of course. Recommendation, this is the ultimate thing we can build in terms of analytics to increase the relevance of whatever we show. And the vision we have media companies, right? So we produce news, we have classifieds, but part of our service, I strongly believe, is providing advertisement. And advertisement, for me, is bringing opportunities to the users. And so being able to raise the relevance of an advertisement, like we do for content, is just creating a better experience for the users and providing a true service to the user. So for me, recommendation is very important. This is actually one of the areas we started investing already now, and in the last 6 months, we produced recommendation engines. but that's another presentation. Optimization we can use for yield optimization. Natalia talked about that. So that's data science, but fine. What does it mean for advertisement? We talk about, in general, the theory about big data and the way we conceptualize it. So to look at how this affects advertising, I like to cover 3 levels: an industry level, a market level, and a product level. So if we look at the industry level, who of you is familiar with the Lumina Landscape? If I can see your hands. Got it. I strongly suggest you check this up. It's free on the web. It's a very insightful description of the advertisement industry and the transformation that has gone through in the last few years. So what you see on the left is a marketer, the advertiser, and on the right is the publisher, Schibsted usually. And the old days, you had a direct connection between those. You would have advertisers calling up the publisher or media agencies. I mean, there were already intermediaries there, and saying, I want to publish this ad, and that was it. So it was very, very simple. And the publisher would say, yes, I have some space, I can sell it, and that's it. And what happened in the last years is that this proliferation of companies in between providing services. So how the heck this happened? A way to look at it, and this is the way I look at it, is to look at it from the point of view of data. Data and technology, of course. Technology plays a huge part, but everything that is happening here is just that everything is being digitalized, represented in digital form through data, and what data does over and over, I see it in banking, in my previous life, I see it here in advertising, it disintermediates. It just is a lubricant in the value chain, and where there is inefficiency or there is an opportunity to create a new service, it just creates the opportunities and opens up a new market. So what happens and is just basically a new way of doing things has emerged. And this is why you see the numbers that Natalia showed before, the growth of data-driven market. Overall, you see the advertising market growing. It's growing much more than it would grow if we stick to the old products. And so, by the way, there is AppNexus. Up here. Just for reference. So I find this very exciting. Data acts as a disruptive force in value chains. This is what you see at the industry level. In all the industry, you name it, I can provide examples. Now, if we take it down one notch and look at the markets and revenue source, we see the growth. We did an analysis ourselves trying to understand where is the market going and where is the advertising market going. And actually, Natalia provided already some compelling figures there. As you saw, what people care more and more is audience targeting. What you care, this is what you say in the report, is that audience targeting is increasingly important. Programmatic, performance, real-time bidding, all these are increasingly important, and we see that also reflected in the growth of that kind of market. So this is how the pie is growing, but also how the pie is being split. And that's all data-driven. Then, if we look at the product-by-product level, the trends which have been mentioned before, so the move from impressions to performance. You want to know what is happening, what's happening with the click, with the action. To do that, you need data to follow what the user is doing. The move from context or placement to targeting. Of course, placement and brand will still be very relevant. But what if you have the brand and the context plus the targeting? It's much more efficient for you. It saves up inventory for us. We all win. At the same time, even if we do audience segmentation, especially with a logged-in environment like Frode talked about, what we are able to do is to create profiles of one. Now, this means going from a clustering, so going to segments, to actually going to segments of one. So we can create a profile describing the user and have a tailored to segment of one type of recommendation. What is the best, the most relevant advertisement to show now? Advertisement or content, actually, algorithmically, it doesn't really make a difference from a data science point of view, but we can see. And we can also predict what is the likelihood of this user to click on the ad versus this other user. So this is where we're going. And of course, automation, programmatic buying, and from single device to cross device. This has been talked about, but this was the overview of the effect that I see of data in this industry. But now let's try to make this a little bit more concrete. So I'd like you to follow me and step back for a minute, think from the top, what is it that we really care about? And we care about, for instance, if we're running a performance campaign, we care about conversion propensity. Will this user click on the ad or not? That's an interesting question. We care about audience targeting, reaching the right people at the right time with the right content. We care about increasingly we care about the cross-device mapping. Maybe not now, but soon. This is a clear trend. Natalia provided an example of how this is emerging as a way of doing advertisement. We care about experimentation, A/B testing. I will tell about a bit about that, and yield optimization, and the data science that we mentioned. So let's look at each of these a little bit more in detail. So we start with from the top, conversion propensity. Why is this important? Well, it helps us to answer questions like, will this user click the ad or not? Or will this user churn? And the way we do it with data science is prediction models. Now, the way to visualize that, I like people to think about this a little bit like Minority Report. So having a data science team, well, Minority Report, who have seen the movie? A few. You have seen, this very intelligent, supreme being that are able to, well, we don't have people like that, but data scientists are not really far off. So it doesn't look this fancy. A prediction looks more like this. This is a churn prediction that we ran on one of our sites. We have been able, and this is thanks to the logged in. So again, linked to the logged in, better data, ability to create a prediction, churn prediction model, which provides, in this case, 90% accuracy. Really cool. So this we're doing. We just want to do this as well for advertising. We're doing for the paper subscription. But this is a concrete example of what can be done. Then, there. Audience targeting, why is it important? We talked about it. It's in order to increase relevance beyond placement and potentially become independent of placement if brand is not your primary criteria. And the way to do it is there are data science models, clustering, segmentation, lookalike, you might have heard. This is how I like to visualize that. What it looks in practice is this tool is giving me a hard time. Where is it? Who took my clusters? They're gone. Okay, it looks a little bit prettier than this. Right. Cross-device mapping. Why would you care? Well, the first thing is you're running a campaign on multiple devices. You want to know who is who because you don't want to run just waste campaign on multiple devices assuming this is different people because technically, especially if you don't have a login, it's based on a cookie, 3 devices is theoretically 3 different people. In practice, especially if you have a login or you have another way to recognize the user across devices, then it's very, very interesting for an advertiser to know, is it exactly the same person? And by the way, since we have access to their tools and they're coming to our site because we have great sites, so they come and consume content, we're able to tell you, well, this user uses a mobile phone between this time in this way, and this user uses the desktop in this other way, so we're actually able to profile users also in the way they consume content on different devices. Interesting information for advertisement, because then you might want to see how to have a progression in your ad campaign at different stages of the day, at different views, and so on. So the way to do it is classification models. There are other techniques to do that, but this is also where data science helps. Then the other thing, which I think is probably one of the most fun part, is the experimentation, A/B testing. So this means being able to launch 2 campaigns or 2 different types of ads and see the performance live in parallel, how they perform, and see who wins. And what you see here is an example of, this is a campaign we ran for one of our products. So it's not, I mean, this is like internal advertisement, but it's exactly the same concept. So we ran the 2 campaigns in parallel for a little time, and then we saw which one won. And you can see, obviously, from here that one wins by a large margin. So what we did is then swap to the winning campaign, and there you go. You have optimization. And you might want to be able to be empowered. This is our vision, empowering advertisers to be able to test different things, try different colors, try different copy, try different way of running the campaigns, and having a dashboard feeding back to you how the campaign went and what won. So that for experimentation. The last thing is yield optimization. Very fascinating problem. An old problem that's been in the airline industry and the hotel industry for decades. But the cool thing about advertising is that in this world, especially programmatic, it's more complex than airlines. So from a data geek like myself, hiring data scientists, this is super cool. So what's the difference? We have like airline, in airline we have seats, customer, time, and price. The equivalent in advertisements is ad, consumer, the right program at the right price. This is a little bit where the similarity ends. Because what we have in advertisement is that you have inventory, and this inventory fluctuates hour by hour. It's like having an airplane which suddenly becomes bigger. One moment is a 320, Airbus 320. The other moment is a Airbus 380. Suddenly we have more inventory because there is news happening in the world, and people just come to the site and create a lot of inventory suddenly. There is seasonality. There is many other factors which makes this incredibly interesting problem to solve. So a lot of work to be done there. Data is available. It's about putting a bunch of data scientists in a room and come up with the smart algorithms, and they're actually pretty good at that. And this is also what we're doing. And this is also one of the strengths of AppNexus. They do a lot of this. So this was the introductory part. I mean, I'm almost done. I don't mean that it was only the introduction. But so I wanted to end on a note of, right, what are we doing in Schibsted? I wanted to share some of the things we're doing there. And hopefully it sparks some questions afterwards. So when I was thinking what to show here, there's a lot to show. In the last 18 months, I built a team. The team is growing. By the way, I just managed to hire the head of data science. Until now, I was heading the data science team. I managed to hire a world-class head of data science from Silicon Valley. In January, we will announce who it is. We're just so excited. And together with the new CTO who joined us in May, who is the guy who built Google AdSense, you can start seeing a pattern. The reason why both Frodas, I would say, exerted so much excitement and confidence is that we feel we are at a point that we don't only have the skill, we start having, together with the great people we already have in our companies, more and more great people joining, which creates a critical mass that allows us to have this kind of confidence we have. So hopefully not too cocky, but I'm excited. So thinking about what to tell and what to share. So what we're striving at Schibsted is to try to create a unique value proposition for advertisers. This is on advertising. This is the key thing we're trying to do. So from a data point of view, you've seen the product map that Froda illustrated. I take a subcat of that. So just looking at the data part. So a unique value proposition from a data point of view, what is relevant for you? You basically care about audience, and you care about, so not only a lot of audience, the right audience, being able to target the audience. So when we talk about audience, one important thing is reach. So a few numbers to keep in mind. In Schibsted, in Spain, we have been growing a lot. Frode Nordside is going to talk about ships at Spain in a minute, we have a very good reach. Has been a very consistent strategy of increasing reach with growing the business in classifieds, in media, but also keep a look on the worldwide dimension of Schibsted. Why? Because as Frode Eilertsen said, I hope this is not confusing, what we want to build is a platform, a network where you can reach any audience we have in the network. So why limit to Spain? Spain is already big. It's going to be probably more than enough for most of you. Some of the advertisers would like to reach a global audience, and we have that. That's an asset. So why not make that available? The second thing is engagement. So not only the reach, but how frequently people come to our site. What kind of engagement do we have with them? And these two things create the audience. And as Frode Eilertsen was talking about, we have the ecosystem. So the fact that a way to look at our strategy in each of the countries is not just a collection of services. There is a logic. We aim to build an ecosystem of services where users go from one service to the other. And even better, when we have this in a lockdown environment like we already have in Norway and soon in Spain, then the amount of data and the profiling that we can do of users across the site, it's really, really interesting. Which leads us to the last point, which is targeting, and targeting is about user data. And with user data, again, it all starts with the ability to follow a user across sites and capture different signals and complete a user profile describing this user. Now, the interesting thing, as Frode Eilertsen said, is how do we stack against other big players, global players, definitely bigger than us, like Google? Do we really have a chance to compete? Well, we did an analysis, and this is our bet, but it's also where our confidence comes. So if we look at a few data points, like demographic, interest, social, intention, status, and wealth, and which are all data points which are relevant for advertisers, how do we stack up against Google? Once we have a login, like we do in Norway, we have nothing less than Google has in terms of understanding demographic. Plus, even if users don't give us gender and age, just looking at the behavior on what you're searching on the classifieds, we very accurately can predict your gender and your age bracket. However, sure, Google is going to always be better on a few things, like interest and social. We are not a social network, they are, like Facebook. They will always be better because this is what they do. Interest is a search engine. Any keyword counts. We will never have that kind of breadth of data. They will always surpass that on that one. However, pay attention to one non-insignificant detail. Let's take intention. Intention has to do with understanding where is the mind of the user in the funnel from being interested in something and actually being ready to do something about it. And I would say, and so far the interaction we had with advertisers just confirms that is a far more interesting data point than just a generic search on Google. So less data, but I would argue for advertiser much more interesting. So concluding remarks. Advertising industry is changing towards a data-driven product. So data is going to be more and more important, as well as data science. Combining online and classified media sites, Schibsted has a broad audience reach, and accurate targeting capability. This has been our strategy all the way. And the last claim is that we believe we can build competitive ads products. And the two core things is that we are capturing unique data, user data, that can be leveraged. And we are building also very strong capabilities in data science, analytics, and technology. This so much I wanted to share with you. If you check our website, schibsted.com, you'll be able to download a report called the Future Report, which has more of the thinking, both on data but other aspects as well, for you to read how we think about these things. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.